Hey guys, welcome back to the Dialed In podcast. This is the low equity edition. We're here again today. We're here every day, Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. So thank you so much for watching and attending. Appreciate your support. I know that all of us here do as well. As always, we're sponsored by RocketBotLeads.ai. They provide day one on-market low equity data, gives us an advantage over the people who are waiting 2 or 3 weeks potentially to even notice that lead exists. So if you guys want to get a discount on RocketBotLeads.ai, there's a coupon code right now in the ticker down below. Unfortunately today, one of our participants is sick. Steph is sick. So what we're going to do with her is limit the amount of times that she has to speak, just so she can get some energy back and hop back in next week and make some phone calls with us. So today, Myelani and I are going to be making phone calls. So Steph, I won't make you introduce yourself. You can do that next week when you have a voice. Steph is in Denton in the DFW market. And next week or whenever she hops in, we'd love to hear more about that, okay? Myelani, you are a veteran here, but just in case people missed you from last week or the week before, I forget which one it was, feel free to introduce yourself again. Tell us what it is that you're looking to accomplish and how people can reach out to you if they want to.
Sure. Hi, Mike. Hi, Steph. My name is Myelani. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 2 girls. I live in Indian Land, South Carolina. I am looking to grow my confidence in speaking to agents about sub 2. I can speak to agents about wholesale deals, no problem. I find that very comfortable, but subject to and creative finance and stuff like that is really something that scares me. So I'm looking to gain my confidence and kind of learn from, Mike and Steph and Dawn and just, grow from here.
We all learn from each other all the time. Thank you so much for coming in. And what we're going to do today, since Steph is not feeling great, Myelani and I are going to be making phone calls together. I'm going to be learning a lot from her. Hopefully she learns a lot from me. And what you guys are going to notice about Myelani is that her voice is incredibly soothing. I had a whole conversation with her about this last time, about how much of an advantage she has just because of her demeanor and her voice. So we're going to try to use that to your advantage as much as we possibly can today and always. Let's see here. Let me send this to Dawn real fast. Myelani, you're starting at the bottom or the top?
Bottom.
Okay, I'll start at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Nellie, this is Mike Jackson. How you doing?
Mike, who? I'm sorry.
My name is Mike Jackson. I was calling about a listing of yours that I just noticed popped up a couple days ago, the one on Northeast 15th Terrace.
Yes.
Awesome. You sound busy. Is now a good time to touch base?
Sure. How can I help you?
Okay, well, I'm interested in potentially buying it. I'm a buyer looking for a rental property in that market. So I'm looking to buy a rental, turn into a rental. And so I just had a couple of questions since I can see the pictures up here. I have a really good sense of condition, that sort of thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about the viability of this property as a rental?
I would say that it is a good rental property, as a lot of people right now are looking for rental in that area.
Are there any sort of restrictions at all for rentals? Any HOA restrictions at all?
No, it's not an HOA.
Okay, perfect. And it is a single story, right?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. One of the things that we do here is we buy, specifically in Florida, actually, is we'll buy homes like this and then turn them into co-living houses for independent older women who maybe they're not just ready for assisted living at this point. So that's kind of why I'm looking at this one. I love the size of it. I love that it's a 3-bedroom. I'm telling you that just in case you ever come across anything else that might fit that type of home. We're always looking to buy more.
Okay.
Anything else I need to know about this before I either schedule time to come see it, or do you have an open house coming this weekend?
Yeah, we have an open house on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, perfect.
Are you in the area?
I have a partner who's in the area. I actually live in Texas, but I have a partner in Cape Coral who can go see this for me this weekend if that's available.
Okay, so are you looking for open concept? Exactly what are you looking for? Just in case this property don't work, we can send you another property.
Yeah, so preferably I'm looking for single-story units. The women we house are a little bit older, so we just don't want them walking up and down stairs. Mm-hmm. And we're looking for 1,500 square feet or more, about 3 bedrooms or more. We'll typically turn some of the space into additional bedrooms. Mm-hmm. So square footage is important to us. So 1,500 square feet minimum is what we're looking for. And then, of course, no rental restrictions or anything like that. We don't want to have to deal with HOAs, for example.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no HOA here. The neighborhood is pretty nice there.
Okay.
Definitely, this will be a good property for older women. And can I have your phone number?
Yeah, it's 949 378 7144.
And your email, just in case I'm thinking about a property that I might be able to send you.
Yeah, you can send me an email at mike.jackson@iaml.com.
Okay. So, and if your partner is not available to come to the open house and they want to go today, tomorrow, I will be more than happy to meet them at the property. Okay, perfect. What type of activity have you gotten on the property? We just put it last night. Okay. So I had just had a couple of calls for showing. Got it. Okay, cool. Well, I have you. Let me ask you a quick question. So one of the ways that we purchase properties like this is by taking over the payments that are already in place. And I'm curious if that's been presented to you as an option either on this listing or one previously. Well, the owner has a assumable mortgage, but it has to be a VA. Right. So it's a VA mortgage. So what you're saying is that the person who assumes it has to be a veteran who has entitlement, so that it sounds like the concern might be the seller's entitlement, correct? Correct. Okay, cool. Awesome. What's the seller's plan? Are they going to go buy a house somewhere else? They're moving out of the country. Oh, okay. And so that's why they need to sell. That sounds kind of nice. Where are they moving to? Panama. Very nice. That's awesome. So, one thing I noticed here when I did some research is that it looks like there's not a ton of equity in the house. Is that right? Correct. But since they're moving to Panama, they have to sell, They have to sell to get their money out? Well, they want to sell without having anything to deal here in the United States. Not to worry about property here. Yep, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I totally get it. In fact, I bought a house up in Orlando, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the seller was in a very similar situation. They weren't moving out of the country, but they were moving out of state. It was also a VA loan. And so what we did there is we were able to pay the agent's commission directly so that they didn't have to. The concern there was the same thing, where
the sellers weren't going to walk away with a lot of equity at closing. So what we tried to do is protect their equity as much as possible. So we paid their agent's commission. We paid the closing costs. We kept the mortgage in place, and it was easier for them just because they were moving out of state. They had plenty of entitlement remaining. We closed that transaction. Now we're actually using that as a rental for ourselves. So if that's ever an option for you guys on this listing, we'd be interested in talking to you about that as well.
And so how does that work? Okay, so you pay the agent's commission, the closing costs. How do you take over the payments? I don't follow you there.
Yeah, so if you think about the sale in two separate ways, right? So typically a traditional sale is going to be one where I come in and I get a new loan or I pay cash for a house, right? Mm-hmm. And the other way is, in this situation, what we would do is we would just simply keep the mortgage in place. The property would change hands, so it would go from your seller to us, and now we would be responsible for paying the loan. Excuse me. It's sort of like an assumable mortgage, but we call it an informal assumption. And so all that we have to do at that point is just continue to make the payments moving forward. And luckily for your seller in this situation, since they're moving out of the country, typically with a VA loan, you'd have to worry about entitlements and that sort of thing. And since they're moving to Panama, they at least wouldn't have to deal with that.
Okay. And what's the process for you said that then you will do an informal assumption. So how is that process? Because there's still going to be a title company involved for the closing. How does that work?
Yeah, so think of it just like a normal transaction. So it's going through a title company. We get title insurance. Sometimes we get attorneys involved if it's necessary, right, to drop documentation. That's a super simple process. Instead of an assumption, have you ever done an assumption before with a seller or a buyer?
No, actually, this would be my first assumption.
Okay. The issue sometimes with assumptions, and I'm not saying it's going to be the case in this situation, but sometimes they take a very long time to complete. And so, sometimes it can take 3 to 6 months, whereas this situation, because it's an informal assumption, we're simply taking over the mortgage payments. We can actually close in a week, 10 days if we have to. Really, whatever the sellers want, we can close whenever they want, as quick as they want, and make sure that they're not paying you your commission, since we are, and they're also walking away with equity, as opposed to, hopefully they don't have to lower the price, because it does look a little bit tight.
Mm-hmm. So they will still walk away with whatever small difference they have there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really key process, especially if they're on a tight timeline or if they just kind of want to move this thing. Or let's say, for example, a lot of the sellers that we work with, they've put their property on the market, but maybe it's a little bit too high in price, or it's not getting the kind of traction that they're looking for. And so what they do is, maybe on day 30 or so of the listing, they have to reduce the price. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that, of course, especially in tight situations like this, is that they would have to reduce it. They're basically reducing their equity, right? For every dollar that they reduce the price, they're reducing their equity. So, the numbers that I see here would make sense for something like this, at least for us, and I hope it would make sense for them. But, whatever you guys want to do, the direction you want to go down, I'm happy to.
But what are the chances? There has to be some kind of grace of you guys taking over the payments, right? Because it's not going to be like you're not buying it out, you're not getting a loan, so the mortgage is not going to be paid off.
Yeah, the mortgage stays in place as is. So that's the only difference between this type of a sale and a traditional sale, if you will. Us getting a new mortgage, to your point, we're not having to do that. And of course, that's going to take lots of time. It's going to cost us lots of money to do that. Instead of going through all those hoops, what we can do is very quickly close on this transaction just by leaving the mortgage in place as it stands.
And what happens if you guys don't pay the mortgage, because it's going to be kind of on his name?
Yep, I love that question. That's a great question. I was kind of waiting for you to ask it. So we can put into our documentation what happens in the event of, we call it default, right? If we miss a payment, what happens in the case of default? And really whatever the sellers want to do and put in the documentation, we're happy to do. Typically what we're doing is putting a 30-day definition of default in place, meaning if a payment's due on the 15th of the month, but a payment hasn't been made for 30 days after that, then at that point, the default has incurred, right? It's happened on the property. So what we'll do most of the time is we'll put a clause in there that says that the property simply reverts back to the seller if they want it. But the beauty of the way that we structure all of our deals, and if you talk to anyone else who does something similar, what we do and what they should do is we put money into reserves to make the payments so that payments technically aren't missed to the mortgage provider. So we put extra layers of protection in there just to make sure that it doesn't affect the seller's credit or they don't have to pay it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what's your company name?
I buy through a company called Revitalized Properties. It's revitalize.com. That's our website. But
Okay.
sometimes I'll buy personally, but that's the company I'm typically purchasing these properties through.
Oh, okay. Okay. I will mention it to them, and then let's see what they say. I know that their credit is very important to them, so I don't know if they would like to take a chance, But I will mention it to them.
Yeah, mention it to them. If you guys want a formal offer, I'm happy to put one together for you so you can take a look at it also. Just so you have something to talk about with the sellers.
Okay.
Okay. I'll reach out to you. I think that let me just make sure I have your email address. I do. Is that kw.com the best one to send an offer to?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I'll shoot that off to you today. Then let me know if you have questions, okay?
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That was the first call I've done like that in a very, very long time. I did not feel good about it at all. Tell me what I could have done better, first off. And by the way, I have a canker sore and it hurts to talk. So, said all of that, lay into me. Hi, Dawn, by the way.
Hey, everybody. Good. Don't be afraid to give him criticism. If something, say it.
Dawn will.
I to avoid doing that, so I want you guys to see what you heard.
If only I had a voice. I want to talk, but I can't talk.
You're talking right now.
And it's like nails against a chalkboard.
We're giving Steph the day off.
Get honey lemon lozenges. Those things are best.
Yes.
Myelani, what did you hear that either was good or bad or indifferent? Because I
Or is it very specific to the fact that, in that area, you actually do have someone there?
We have people in every market, right?
Okay.
Dawn and I do. So do you. You have people in every single market.
Okay.
So if a property has to be seen, and we highly encourage you guys to see properties before you get them under contract, or actually during your inspection period, actually do a physical inspection. Dawn and I have bought a couple properties that maybe we regretted buying because we didn't make the time to go see it. So
Okay.
yeah, we have people in every single market. The four of us have people in every single market.
Okay. Okay. So I did not know that, but I appreciate that for sure.
I was also going to give Dawn a vacation to Florida. So
Oh, nice.
that was the surprise for today.
Yeah, and I think, for me, hearing it from the perspective of an informal assumption, I do like it when agents talk about an assumption, because I feel like there's a little bit more wiggle room for understanding when it comes to, talking about subject to, because there's room for us. I mean, obviously they're not the same thing, but when it comes to assuming the loan, they're a little bit more open, I think, to the process. And so when you called it an informal assumption, I felt like that kind of helped close the gap between her understanding of an assumption, even though she's never done one before, but closing the gap between her understanding of an assumption and subject to. And so I feel like that really helped, narrow the misunderstanding or confusion around that. And then you were able to kind of, move on to explaining how it works. So I think that was good.
Yeah, she had a foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the assumption. If she knows what an assumption is, we're kind of bridging the gap between a traditional sale and the type of sale that we're referencing, right? Mm-hmm. So by her bringing up assumption, she's right there understanding at least what the idea of it is, but technically she doesn't understand how it works, mm-hmm. right? And so that's going to be my job moving forward with her, is explain to her how it works, most importantly, how it protects her seller. As long as we can protect the seller, that's what we're going to communicate to her. Dawn, tear me apart.
I think you did really well. I think it was clear that you were a little rusty. You were trying to fill air, right?
Yep.
So
totally fair.
I'm trying to figure out what was specifically said. I think you did great on not using the triggers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone all up in arms right now about trigger words like taking a mortgages and sub to, and is that what you're talking about? And they get a little upset, which is fine. So Myelani, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, where an assumption is kind of like opening the door. You get your foot door to be able to explain another transaction, very similar, but it's not the same, right? It's trying to distinguish the two is really, really hard. Because you could tell in that explanation that she was trying to wrap her head around, well, wait, this sounds like an assumption, but what's the difference? And she asked a really good question. What's the risk, right? Really great question. And she did it in such a way that allowed Mike to go into that longer explanation versus being aggressive and being like, no, so much risk left for my client without hearing what those could be, right?
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, you, Mike, did a great job of allowing her to kind of work through what you were telling her and making it easy to understand that it wasn't overcomplicated. Mm-hmm. Because the second you start overcomplicating, what happens?
And that's always the hardest part. When you're explaining this, it's always hard explaining something and simplifying it as much as possible.
Yeah, everyone wants to try and go super far in depth, right? You don't know when to stop. Mm-hmm. Or as my mother would say, you don't know not add on, right? Because you have someone that you're talking to and they get their point across, maybe they're arguing with you, and then you try to say something and then they keep adding on to what they said. And so you can never get a word in edgewise. You have to learn when to shut up, right? Because you're not making it better by filling more information in. You're not allowing them to process it. So it's a hard balance. Some people can take it, depending on what part of the conversation you're in with them. Is it the first phone call? Is the next phone call? Is it the 10th phone call? Then you can have more in-depth conversation. But for now, you probably don't need to go beyond the simplest unless you have a super savvy agent or person that you're talking with that understands. So, Mike, you did a really good job with keeping it simple and going with the flow. I think you got a little tripped up when you're trying to tell the third-party story, right? Just a little, because we've had stories like that, but maybe it wasn't always in that state, right, or in that kind of scenario. So you're trying to find a way to be relatable. I mean, those things don't happen. It just means Might be a few different things in there. But other than that, I really didn't have anything super negative. I just tell that you were rusty. That's all. Just
Rusty, yeah. Rusty, great way to put it. The other thing, actually, I just thought of it. The deal that I should have referenced is the Shelton Pass one, because they moved back to Bulgaria or wherever they came from. And it was also a VA loan. So that one would have been a really direct third-party story.
Yeah.
But, this is actually a good deal. So you guys didn't see the numbers on it, but net to seller traditionally is like $3,000, and it's a 4% VA loan. And it sounds to me like they probably want to move quicker. They probably don't want to sit on this very long. It sounds like they want to go down to Panama. And them being out of the country, if they're there forever, then they might have fewer fears about someone taking over their payments here, because it's not going to affect them with whatever they're doing there. So still some exploration to do there, but we'll see where that one goes.
Did you, did she allude to a timeline? We're assuming it's as soon as possible. Did she allude to like how quick they need to move, or if it's vacant already and things like that? Did she?
What I picked up on from her, she didn't say anything directly, but she said something to the effect of they need to
get rid of it.
Something like that. And typically, a job is not going to want to wait 6 months to sell.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that for this one, the way that I'll kind of tee this one up for myself is I'm going to write them an offer that gives them about the same amount of cash at close that I see right now with my calculations. I'm going to be paying her commission directly. I'll pay all the closing costs. And then obviously we're going to be taking over the payments on the mortgage. So that's just to start a conversation, and we'll see where it goes. One thing, I don't know if I mentioned it to you last time, Myelani, or not, but what's really important is controlling the conversation at this point. What I don't want to do is have her communicate what she heard from me today to her sellers. What I want to do is let me communicate that to her sellers. Now, whether that's direct or not, I don't know what the outcome is going to be. But in the meantime, what I will do is I'll create a video for them, explaining exactly what the offer looks like, so that she can show that to her sellers, so that she doesn't have to communicate that directly to them without her knowing a whole lot about the process.
I think that would be amazing, because they put a face to the buyer, and it makes you more relatable. I feel. I think that will probably, if not, they'll be curious at least.
Right.
And I think just the effort that you've put in to present it that way would make a huge difference.
It's always going the extra mile, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And who can say no to this face? You know what I mean? You guys know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
All right, Myelani, your turn. You get on a phone call now. No more dilly-dallying. No more. Let's get you on a phone call. Steph, thumbs up or thumbs down on that phone call?
I liked it. It's good.
Okay. Good. We're going to do hand signals with you today, okay?
Okay.
I'm trying to find a phone number for an agent we called yesterday, Dawn, who picked up the phone, asked the caller if this was a sub-2 offer, which is rare, right? Because with this data, we don't necessarily have those kinds of conversations. But what happened was they did a sub-2 deal months ago, like call it 6 months ago for sake of example, and things fell out of the bottom. Lawsuits, the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I wanted to give him a call and see what the story was.
I think it's something that people need to be aware of, is you need to be very honest about what you're doing. And you need to be very forthcoming at the risks, right? everyone takes risk. Everyone, the seller especially has probably the biggest risk and the whole thing. And you need to be very clear on what those are ahead of time and make sure everyone understands that. And you also have to hold the buyer accountable and yourself accountable to the wholesaler to make sure that the buyer is going to follow through when things go wrong. Right? When things go bad, what do you have in the contract to be able to protect both sides? And how are those issues resolved? And as long as everyone's on the same page with that and everyone's okay with assuming that risk, then there shouldn't be an issue moving forward. Now, as far as handling those things, there could be issues.
And yeah, I just wondered if you could tell what's going on with the property. Apparently, yes. And what is going on with has it drawn any interest recently?
Yeah. We just listed on. Was it Sunday? I think we listed Sunday morning. We've had showings. I don't have any offers. You sent feedback from one of the showings. So I think it's going pretty well. The other agents before I listed, and they said traffic was extremely slow on their listings. Mm-hmm. So we were pretty excited that we've had those showings and we haven't even been on the market for weeks. So not too bad, I guess.
I understand. Now, I was looking at one picture online.
Yes, the professional photos in Monday. I need to text the photographer and see if they're ready yet. But you're welcome to go look at it. So yeah, I'll text him. I'll put the pictures up as soon as I have them. Okay. I just don't have them yet.
Okay. Are there any issues with the property? It looks pretty decent, obviously from outside, and it's fairly new.
There's nothing wrong with it. No problems. It's still fairly new. Yeah, so no issues.
Okay. Now I'm looking at it as a potential investment property, but I see it has an HOA. Do they have any restrictions with regards to having rentals in that area?
I don't think so, but I attached the CCRs in the MLS. Are you an agent?
No, I'm a buyer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can email you the CCRs if you want me to, and you can look over them. Give me a second. Let me grab the email. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, if I do?
Yeah. Give me your email. That works just fine.
Okay, I'll do that only because we don't want to make a mistake with that.
Sure.
Okay, but that being the case, why is it being sold? Why is the seller interested in selling?
They need to upgrade.
Okay.
They need more space.
Okay. Do they have something already lined up?
We don't. No, ma'am.
Okay. So is it vacant, or are they still in the property waiting for sale?
They're still there.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Now, with regards to, you said you haven't received any offers as yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the fact that there's not much there's not much equity left in the property. Have they ever considered receiving? Have they ever offered, or have you gone through the process of presenting something similar to their payments being taken over?
Like seller financing?
Well, not seller financing, but just being able to informally assume the loan, where we take over the current payments on the mortgage. It looks like they've got a balance already on the mortgage, so we would just take over the payments.
Yeah, from what I understand with the lender we're working with, they have to buy in order to sell. So I don't know if that would work. That sounds like a lender question, probably.
Okay. Is it something that you've ever, I'm assuming you've never done it before?
I've not. No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I mean, with regards to that, we would be able to address the debt to income ratio in a way that will allow the seller to be able to move on and purchase another property. But I have a partner who's able to explain it in more detail. If you think that might be possible, then we can always schedule another, like a three-way conversation where my partner is able to explain that in more detail to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, could you maybe just send me an email with more info on it, and then I can send it to the lender to see if maybe she's familiar, because she's been doing this a long time, so she's probably familiar. Do you have anything like in an email that I could maybe send her about what you're suggesting? Oh, yeah, definitely. I can do that. I'm looking at your email address, Audrey. Is it, let's see, ATOS CANO Davis at salfomax.com? Oh, that's it. And that's the one? Okay, no worries. So I can send you an email just explaining exactly the process. And obviously, from our perspective, we just want to make sure that it's a win-win situation for everyone, and ensuring that you will get paid. And we will also, make sure that the closing bills and everything like that are paid for as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just shoot it to me an email. Let me send it to the lender, and then I'll talk to them about it. And in the meantime, I'll send you the CCR so you can review them. Okay, no worries. Now, do you have any other listings that you're taking care of at the moment that are on your portfolio? No, not any for sale. Okay. No, ma'am. Okay. I'm sorry. No, that's okay. I'm interested in buying more property in the area as well. So if there's anything that does come up, obviously I will shoot you a text with my email, and you can always keep that as for future reference. Okay. Yeah. All right. That sounds good. Thanks so much for contacting us. Okay. Thanks, Audrey. Take care. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye. Bye.
All right, Steph. You ever seen The Gladiator? This move? Or this move? What do you think? I thought this. Turn it up. Turn it up. Myelani, really good job. Don, what are your thoughts?
I think you did a great job. I kept her going on the phone. I could feel that you felt under pressure, right? Which is fine. It's totally okay. Great job.
Yeah. I think, Myelani, I picked up on the same thing that Dawn did. It was the uncertainty about where to go next, right? And that's just repetitions, right? Yeah. Dawn and I have had 1,000 of these phone calls, or more. And so it's really just repetition, right? So, Dawn, what did you pick up on anything that the agent said that you could maybe even dive a little bit deeper into?
Yeah. And one thing I am going to say before I answer that is both Mike and I have different styles, right? Different ways of attacking. And so something that I am going to say here may be completely different than what he's going to say. Okay. So it is wrong or right. It's just differences. For me, I would have gotten off the phone a lot faster. For me, the second that she said, hey, can you send me something? Or even just a little bit before that, I've been like, okay, well, why don't I just send you an email? I'll kind of give you an idea what offer looks like, and hopefully we can keep in touch. If you have any questions, then just let me know. And I would bounce because I'm looking forward to the next conversation, right? Okay. I don't want to get all of my information out in one phone call, right? Because then what's the point in her not wanting to talk to me again, right? I want to get the little tidbits of information for me to understand where this listing is and what the story is a little bit, so I can formulate a plan moving forward, right? But there are some that probably Mike was perfectly fine with being on the phone a lot longer because he wants to elongate it, and that's okay. For me, my comfort is, all right, I got my information. Let me process, then let me, figure out how I'm going to manage the next follow-up call. because I feel like my personality will get something out in the second, third, or fourth phone call, right? Versus Mike, the way he attacks these conversations allows him to draw more at the front end than what I could do, right? It's his voice. I have no idea. But
I just don't want to have a second or third conversation.
he doesn't want to have a second conversation. Me, I don't mind it, right? Because I feel like I like the building rapport in a very elongated manner. I don't like being a bother in general to people. Not that we are. It's just, if I get that in for me on a phone call, I don't want to set that as the tone I talk to people. Mike has no problem with a little bit of irritation here and there because he can handle it. My personality cannot handle that. I get very self-conscious about it. So it's a me thing. But in that phone call, the big one in there was, do you have something that I could send to the lender? Right? Now, which lender is she talking about was the first question I thought. Is it her current lender with the seller, or is it the one that they're going to?
I think it's the broker. She's misusing the word lender, I think, for broker or loan officer.
Right. Okay. So that's what the clarification is I would get is, okay, is this their current lender or is it their new broker, their mortgage broker, their loan officer for their new property? Because what was the big thing in there? They have to sell this property in order to purchase, right? So they need to know where they stand. If they don't sell this property, then what happens? Can they still go get a loan? How is the lender going to operate?
Now, Dawn, is there a solution for that?
There is a solution for that. Why don't you tell them what it is?
A lease purchase. So a lot of people think of these calls as you're going into war, and they have all the ammunition, right? The agents have all the ammunition. Well, they can't do it because they're moving out of the country, or they can't do it because it's a VA loan, or they can't do it because they need to sell this house to buy a new one, right? That's the one that we're talking about right now. And so the way that we've gotten around that in the past is you do a lease purchase. So effectively, you put in place a lease on the property, a formal lease. It's written down. It's signed by both parties. You have first and last month's rent and a security deposit submitted. So you actually need to send them money to actually enact this lease, right? Put it into place, make it legitimate. Then what you do, at that point, in this case, she's going to use the word lender. I'll use loan officer. The loan officer is going to look at that lease and say, okay, well, now because they're lending or they're renting out their house for $2,000, the lender is able to use, the loan officer is able to use a certain percentage of that total income amount to offset their DTI. It depends on the type of loan that they have, whether it's a VA, FHA, or conventional. So let's say, for example, it's a conventional loan and it's a $2,000 lease that I'm now contracted for to pay to the seller. What the loan officer will do is take $1,500 of that $2,000 and apply that towards their income. That will help offset their DTI, hopefully to the point where they're able to qualify for their next home. At that point, what they'll do is they'll actually buy the next home first, and then right away you close on the house that they're selling.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
No.
Yeah.
So is a lease purchase the same as a lease option?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a very good question. And I'm glad that you brought this up, right? So in some states, you can do lease options or you can't, right? But like Texas, for example, technically you can do lease options in Texas, but they make it very difficult because you have to renew it very, very, very often. So instead of a year that you have to renew these contracts, it's 6 months, I believe. It's somewhere in there. Don't quote me on that, but it's a very short amount of time. So every 6 months, you have to re-up this lease option, which is not conducive for anybody involved, because once the transaction's done, nobody wants to be involved with anybody unless there's a problem, right? Cool, I washed my hands, I'm done. So Texas allows lease purchases more so than they do lease option. So what's the difference? A lease option gives the buyer the option to purchase at the end of their lease. Okay? Mm-hmm. It also gives the seller or the owner a chance to be able to say yes or no if they agree to that, right? So that means, let's say in 6 months, the house appreciates, but the price they had originally agreed upon is less. Well, of course, the buyer or the seller is going to want to renegotiate that, right? So that's what it allows that time for. But a lot of people have taken advantage of that sometimes and used it against the potential buyer or the lessee to be able to kind of cheat them out of money or exploit them because maybe appreciation's so high. So what people do instead is they do a lease purchase, where at the end of whatever term you guys agree upon, then the buyer and the seller are both locked in at a certain price, right?
Okay.
So the buyer is then going to get financing. If they don't get financing, that's the way they can get out of it. The seller does not have to agree to renew their lease at that point. Right? So, but they have agreed upon price. So there's no going up, there's no going down unless both parties agree. The buyer cannot or the seller can dictate that purchase price any longer because they agreed upon it before. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Did I explain that well enough?
So lease purchase has a fixed price. Lease option, not necessarily so. A lease
option is the option to buy, right? Mm-hmm. It gives them the option at the end of the lease if they want to purchase. Okay. If they don't, they could potentially ask, hey, can I continue this lease, right?
Okay.
Because I can't get financing right now. That's an option. Only if both parties agree. A lease purchase is more definitive, right? It's saying that by the end of the year, I'm going to go and have financing ready to be able to purchase the property by X date. If I don't, then the seller has the option to just say, hey, you don't have financing ready. That was your option. Now I don't have to sell it to you anymore because you don't have it ready.
Okay.
Right. They could also, do the extension on the lease if the seller agrees. But most of the time, people are they need time to get ready to purchase. Maybe they got something on their credit, or they have something that they get off of their credit. They need to build a little bit longer, so that takes time. Doing a lease purchase allows for a potential buyer to do that, right? Same thing with the lease option. It's just one gives you an option, the other one gives a definitive date.
Okay.
Did I explain that? Well, Mike, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did great. I think that if you think of a lease purchase as more of a process instead of lease option, which is really different documents, right? A lease purchase, think of it as a process where first we're going to lease it, then we're going to purchase it. So, in your head, you're kind of going, what's the difference between that and a lease option? It's just the paperwork. It's just different. But here's what I would do if I were you, Myelani.
Yeah.
Your call was great. And as I've always told you, the way that you speak to an agent is super soothing, and it's non-threatening in a great way. And that's going to allow you to push questions that I couldn't push. For example, what's the seller's next step? Or what are the sellers doing? What's wrong with the property? You asked a couple of these questions that in my head, I was going, holy smokes, I can't ask that. But you can. And so, lean into that a little bit. You can dive in deeper than I can with those questions. I would also work on the things that you feel uncomfortable on, which is probably yesterday in our calls, we called it the transition, right? It's the part of the call where you're kind of like talking about the house, you're talking about the sellers, is it vacant? What's their situation? How do you go from that to, hey, this is how I purchase homes,
Okay.
That's always the hardest part, besides just picking up the phone. But once you get on the phone, that's always the hardest part.
It is.
So, I've done it a lot, and so the transition isn't as scary for me. And I can do it a couple of different ways. But the way that I really started to feel comfortable with it is working on the same thing over and over again. Not word for word, but hey, this is how I script it out, basically. So for example, my transition is, hey, Don, one of the ways that we purchase is by taking over the payments. The advantage for the seller is that we come in, we make sure that the commissions are paid for their agent. We pay all the closing costs. It looks like it's a tight equity position. Have you guys explored this opportunity yet with the sellers? And it can be just that simple. And they're going to be like, well, what do you mean? Well, it's a very, very simple thing, but you just have to say it over and over and over again until you become comfortable with it. I made the mistake of doing it on live phone calls, which is extra challenging, but I think it helps to rehearse it outside of, kind of role play it for yourself, or role play it with Steph or me or Don or whatever. Okay. It's always helpful to role play that in just that part, because that's the most important part.
Okay. I think, yeah, like when Dawn said, like she gets like, let's have another conversation later. I think I'm that way as well. Like, yeah, building the relationship. But, if I feel like I've hit a stalemate, then it's like, yeah, maybe let's just end it here, end on a good note. Everyone is happy. And they're not cringing when they see my number pop up on their phones the next time.
Now, I will say one thing, though. Don't let that be a crutch for you to stop conversations, okay? Only reason I know that is because I suffered a lot of conversations, a lot. While I say that I pull back, I do. I pull back or I end the call. However, I've gotten to the point after practice of learning how to pivot in a conversation. So when I feel weird, I just switch to something different, right? I transition like you did into, hey, I know you have this listing here, but do you have any properties that you get on the market? Do you work with investors a lot? Something to kind of break up the technical talk, and then I'll go back to the other technical talk, right? Because it gives a little bit of space and breathing room. Because by that point, I should feel more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
But never get off the phone if there's more information that you need to get. Because the thing you want to do is get on the phone with somebody, waste their time, and then when you feel uncomfortable, you get off the phone and didn't accomplish anything. So don't use it as a crutch. Just know who you are, right? If you feel comfortable, okay, I switch at this moment about something different for a second so I can get my bearings back and go back to the conversation to get what I needed to get.
Yep. It's a pattern interrupt for both of you on the phone call, right? It interrupts their thought process. It also interrupts yours in a good way. So you can kind of circle back to it.
Reset.
Yep. Reset. So Pace talks a lot about bullets, right? You don't want to shoot all of your bullets on one phone call. Okay. And so if you think about what I would do is I would set a goal for that first phone call. What is your goal? For me, what it is present the way that I purchased to the agent, just to gauge interest. Is the seller interested? Is the agent interested? And then what I do at that point is base my second phone call off of what I heard on the first phone call. And I'll say it in a way that is very hands-off. I'll say something like, I know that you guys aren't ready for this type of an offer yet. If I were the seller, I probably wouldn't even consider something like this for at least 3 or 4 weeks. But if you guys do get to the point where maybe you're not getting the activity that you're looking for or the offers that you're looking for, and you're considering lowering the price, I can explain to you how this possibly could work in a financially beneficial way for your seller. And also I can explain to you how they're protected, and also how you can explain it to them in a way that makes sense for them. Just to provide them with a secondary option, no pressure whatsoever.
And these are things that you learn over time, Myelani. Like, it's not going to be perfect. I have yet to still have a perfect phone call. And we've been on a lot of them. they never go well or the way that you expect them to, right? And that's what I mean, they don't go well.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to be perfect, but they are never going to be. There's always going to be a wrinkle, right? Even Pace doesn't have, these big conversations that are perfect. Do they sound great? Yes. But if you ask him, you're like, hey, did you think that phone call was perfect? Because we all did. He'd say no. Because he didn't get to an that he had in his own mind that he wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Did he information? Sure. But was it what he accomplished in the call? More than likely not.
Okay.
But he got enough. So you don't have to be like that, and you don't have to be on the other end of the spectrum so terrified that you can't ask the questions you want to ask. Just do it. You're going to have your birthday. No one's going to take that away from you. It's going to be fine. You like that one? Yeah, that one was told to me a lot. I was like,
you're going to have your birthday. Don't worry, it's coming.
Yeah.
Dawn's birthday is coming, actually.
No, not.
In 3 weeks.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
February 16th, everybody.
Oh, boy.
You're almost a Valentine's baby.
I was supposed to be a leap day baby. Yeah. I would like that because then I could say, I'm X amount of years younger than what I actually am because my birthday didn't exist.
You'd have been like, I'm 10 or something.
Yeah, right? Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, God.
But you did a great job. Don't overthink it. Remember, you're talking to someone familiar to you, right? Picture that as a friend across the table that you know, and it'll make that conversation easier.
Mm-hmm.
And you're both working towards the same goal. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's do this. Great job, Myelani. What I want you to do, here are your marching orders. I want you to think about your phone call progression, meaning like first phone call, second phone call, third phone call, and set a goal for the first phone call only right now.
Okay.
What's your goal on the first phone call? And then also work on that transition from the BS part of the conversation. How am I just shooting the shooting the bull? I live in Texas, shooting the bull.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you transition into, let me explain to you what the process looks like the way that I purchase. And you can do it a couple different ways. One is the really hands-off. One is the more aggressive. I would probably stick with the hands-off, no pressure. This is what I do. If it works for you, great. If not, no big deal. Maybe you can work on something with me in the future.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are your marching orders. Let me try to make one phone call to this guy from yesterday, this agent. If he picks up, great. If not, no big deal.
Hi, this is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. My name is Mike. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I had a friend call me yesterday. She had a conversation with you about a listing, and she brought this to me just because she thought it was interesting. She said that the listing that she was calling on, she presented the option of sub 2, and your reaction, I guess you went through a lawsuit or something like that.
Yes.
And I was curious. This is like a friend calling a friend trying to figure out what happened to you to maybe prevent the same situation from happening to me. Would you mind sharing that with me?
Sure. Are you a local agent?
No, I live in Texas, but I buy a lot of sub 2 deals for myself, and then I'll sell them on owner finance. So
I should tell you exactly what happened.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, so I was presented with that from a call like the lady that called me the other day, and it was the buyer investor, which is someone like you, and he presented an offer, and it was really good, and we went with the offer, and it was not written exactly 100% correctly. As far as the trust, is that how you're doing them, setting up a trust?
Sometimes it depends on where I do it. It depends also on the kind of trust.
Also, I wasn't involved in all the legalities, but it was set up with an attorney that created some sort of a trust that I guess the buyer is a trustee of. and it was not set up properly, and the bank has called the note, and now they're foreclosing on the home, and there's a lawsuit for damages on top of that. So, I mean, you can't even imagine the type of mess we're in.
Interesting.
And the buyer, on top of that, the buyer's losing his $250,000 deposit, which isn't great either.
The buyer is losing a $250,000 deposit?
Well, the buyer put $250,000 down on the house, and they're foreclosing on the house, so he's losing it.
What was the asking price on the home?
It was 1.2, I think, 1.3, something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, he's losing it. I mean, he's trying to get it back from the seller, but I mean, you know, the seller's not going to give it back. Seller doesn't even really have it anymore, you know. So yeah, it's not a great situation, in my opinion.
That's awful. I'm sorry that everyone went through that. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, and it was something that would have been really preventable. There's certain verbiage that the attorney should have used in the trust that was created that would not make it, you know, to where the note was callable by the bank. But yeah, so like now they're also, so the bank is also suing the seller for damages. And the buyer is suing the seller to get his deposit back and all the closing fees and everything. And the seller's losing the house because they've already started the foreclosure proceedings. Crazy, right? Can you imagine?
No, I can't. It sounds like an awful situation for everybody. You know, when you said trust, I immediately got interested because there are times when we'll set up a sub-2 acquisition and put the property into a trust to prevent the bank from foreclosing on a mortgage that has a due on sale clause called. And you know, there's this act called the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982 that states that if a property is in a revocable living trust, then a bank cannot foreclose on that property.
I know, and the attorney specifically stated that exact clause or whatever that you just mentioned, and it didn't work.
Interesting. That's so interesting.
So that clause did not hold up because he literally wrote in the rebuttal or whatever to the bank that actual thing that you just read with the year in it and everything.
Yeah.
And it did not hold up.
Wow. That's so interesting.
But you know, it's really crazy because first of all, there's no damage. Second of all, the buyer and the seller tried to make it right. The buyer actually deeded the property back to the seller after all this happened, and the bank still won't let it go. Like, what the hell does the bank want? There's not even really equity in the home. So this is going to cost the bank money. So it's very odd that the bank is acting like this, don't you think?
I do. Do you know which bank it is?
It's a bank that you would have never heard of. It's just a tiny little bank here.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So, you know, if you think about a local bank that might, I'm going to make up a number, but it could be 5,000 mortgages that they service or that they've originated, compared to maybe a Mr. Cooper or a Flagstar, you know, that have millions of mortgages.
Sure.
You know, what's going to happen with the smaller banks typically is that they're going to have, instead of just kind of like a cursory overview of all the loans on a monthly basis, that local bank is going to look very closely at every single loan. And so they're going to make sure that if a deed changes hands, then they have the ability to call that due, and their eyes are going to be on that thing, you know?
But like, why though? I mean, they're going to foreclose on, but they're not going to get any money. I think what's owed on the house is more than what the note is for. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it seems like a stupid thing if I were the bank.
It seems like a stupid thing on the bank's behalf because they were still getting payments from the buyer. There was never a missed payment. The buyers still wanted to make the payments. Now they won't even take a payment, $8,000 payment. They won't even take it from the buyer. It seems very odd to me. Something doesn't make sense.
It sounds like they're just trying to make a statement, you know?
They are. That's what the attorney said.
Yeah.
But they're making a statement, but it seems like they're shooting themselves in the foot. If you can do math, you know what I mean?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It doesn't seem like it's a square kind of situation for me. In fact, when the buyer goes back and says, okay, we'll just deed it back to the seller, that's typically an easy remedy for these situations.
That's what they said. They said this will remedy the whole situation. We'll just deed it back. So they deeded it back. Nope. did not remedy it. This was a couple months ago. The bank said, no, we are not letting it go. The damage has already been done. We're callable, and we're still foreclosing.
And what damage?
We needed it back. We were saying 50,000 damage. I haven't seen all these documents. I sort of removed myself. I'm the agent, you know.
Smart.
So I removed myself from the situation, you know.
Jeez. Wow. Well, I appreciate you giving me the rundown. I think that this is the worst story I've heard. So I appreciate your insight. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah, and the person that did this, the buyer, I mean, he's done this a lot. This was not like a first-time deal. So he knew what he was doing, or he thought he knew what he was doing.
Was he going to live in the house himself?
He actually, I think, was. I'm not sure, but I think he was.
Wow. So weird. Well, thanks so much for taking my call, Ryan.
Hopefully I could help. Of course.
Yeah, have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right. Same to you. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Holy cow.
Holy cow.
That was my question. I was like, oh man, here comes another story, somebody not making payments and following through. But in fact, that was not the case. The bank decided they wanted to call the note due for no reason. No, there was no reason. And well, that it's high because the purchase. So the buyer put down probably what, 20%, right? So that made sense to me. Set the price point of the house, but in most cases, usually the note gets called due, and you could have asked them this. It could have been the insurance that was the problem. It could have been that trigger from the insurance. Now that I'm thinking about it, but even still, what damages can the mortgage company claim? That's my question. And maybe that's something that we have to figure out and dive into more. But what damages would they have? Because they can't say damages for things that they're doing right now. Like they're saying damages as in, hey, these are our costs for suing these people, costs for doing this. But that wouldn't have happened until the note due. So you can't sue for preconceived damage, right, before the action even happens. So the question is there something wrong with the house? And if there's something else, man, they did some spying and some investigating for them to go out and be like, oh, the roof's damaged. And I imagine on $1 million house, it's not a small house.
Local bank, 1 point something million is a big chunk to them. Like it's worth its weight in gold for them. To other banks that's probably just a drop in the ocean, but to them that's like really substantial, and so they want to get as much from it as possible. But that's the people that are being affected by this. It's painful.
Well, and to that point though, yes, the bank makes a huge difference. Very, very big, because you have more eyes on a small amount of it comparatively to like the national banks. But again, there was no reason for them to call it, and not that they necessarily need a reason, but they kind of need a reason. Like if they weren't getting it or it was late or something like that, I could see why that would be a trigger, right? But they're claiming damages. That's the weird part for me. This doesn't fit.
Yeah.
They can call the note due without claiming damages because they have the right to. Every mortgage has the right to be called due, whether you did something wrong or not. But you should allow them to resolve it. And they tried to. And the bank still said no, which is kind of crazy to me that a judge would allow that. But all right. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, I think you make great points. It's all such a messed up situation. I think that the bank is trying to make a point. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't shock me if they sent out press releases about this just to make the point that they don't want this happening in the future. But, all this goes to say that now that banks are more aware of what it is that more investors are doing in the market, it's going to require us to do a much better job of doing everything legally, by the book, make sure that we're communicating properly with sellers and agents, and also disclosing the whole way too, right? So this sucks for everybody involved. It sucks for the buyer. I mean, it sounds like he or she was going to live in the house. They lose a $250,000 down payment and they lose the house. You know, the seller is reputationally probably not in a great situation.
Credit's affected.
Credit's affected despite payments not being missed.
And the buyer doing everything right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. The buyer did everything right, didn't do anything wrong. There's no one really to blame here. And you can blame them if you want, but again, they still have the right, because it's their loan, to be able to call it due. Right? Mm-hmm. While everyone's upset about it, it sucks. It just sucks. And these are things that you have to make sure that you're explaining, that when things go bad, they can go bad. And you have to prepare everybody involved for that to happen. Hopefully it never does, but you start seeing more of it. And it's just being cautious, being upfront, and being honest about what you're doing. And that's including you, wholesalers. I'm one of them. You've got to make sure that people know that you are not the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay? Do not wait until post-close to tell people in buy the house. It will cause so many problems. You need to tell them so they have a way to communicate. Otherwise, it's not going to be good. So please, just be straightforward, honest, upfront about what's happening. You may not know at the beginning what you're going to do with the house. That's fine. But as you find out, tell people.
No.
Because when things go wrong, they have to be able to communicate back and forth.
100%. All right, ladies, eventful day. Thank you so much for attending, Steph. Myelani, it was great to see both of you. Steph, next time, can't wait for the next time when you're feeling much better. Thanks so much for hanging with us, by the way, being sick. Until next time, guys, thank you again so much for your support. Appreciate all of you guys attending. Appreciate all you guys watching. We're here to help. Continue to watch. Hopefully we can help you guys directly. Thank you guys so much. See you guys later.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.